Good afternoon. This is John Davis with Linehaul Central, and I'm going to go over maintenance programs for linehaul contractors today. And there's a lot involved in this and making sure that everyone has a good maintenance program set up. And I'm going to go through some tips and tricks and different things that I see with line haul programs and their maintenance program. I do want to let you know that we are recording this webinar and that it'll be available to all the participants afterwards. There is a question and answer that you can ask questions in the chat there. And when I get to the end of this, I'll go through some of those questions. I'm sure you'll have a lot of them as I go through this. But let's get started with where we are as a whole, as a group of contractors in the line haul space, and why these are being looked at so closely by the line haul managers, and why are we here? Why have we gotten to this point? So the big thing that I want you to understand is the contractors came into DOT number 86876 in roughly around April of 2024. The mandate was June of 2024, but we've started bringing in the contractors in. And since we brought all the contractors under this DOT number, under the vehicle maintenance basic score, it has increased 431.1% in literally just 2 years. So when you're getting hit from line haul on this stuff and you're going, what's going on? Why are they hitting me on these vehicle maintenance violations? Why are they disqualifying my drivers? Why are they, hitting my SRS report? And why is this affecting me so much? This is the why behind the scenes from corporate on what's going on. So it's increased 431.1%. And so what is corporate looking at from the contractors is going, well, what are you guys doing to change it to the other direction and start lowering the scores down? And that's really what the focus is on this. What's the difference between contractor equipment and then line haul equipment? So if you look at the last 24 months under the vehicle maintenance basic score, 37.7% of the roadside violations under vehicle maintenance were the contractor's tractors. The rest of it was under line haul equipment. And so understanding that, 37.7% of it is on your equipment, then that's why they're picking on the contractors on, we got to get this ship turned around and moved into the right direction on this. So I'm going to go through some of the problems and talk a little bit about this. If you look at this, the number one violation that we've had in the last 24 months is tires. And that could be on the tractors, that could be on the trailers, that could be on the dollies. It is tires there. And then the second most frequent is brakes. Now, brakes have a unique problem in our system because drivers don't necessarily have the experience or the availability to check brakes like they should. Now, they can do the test of brakes inside the cab and do stuff like that, but getting into the brake systems and looking at them and checking the gaps for brakes and stuff like that, our drivers generally do not have that experience, nor do they do that on a regular basis through their pre-trip inspections. And then if you think about lamps on this, is, that could be the headlights are out, the tail lights are out, the marker lights. That could be on the tractor, that could be on the trailers, it could be on a lot of different areas of the equipment. And those are easy to capture as these drivers are doing their pre-trip inspection to catch those type of things. But if you look through all of this, tires, brakes, lamps, that's the majority of what's going on in the system. So tires and lamps, pretty easy for the driver to identify defects and whatever the issues are there. Brakes, not so easy. So we're going to talk a little bit about that on how we manage that and how we get that handled properly. You see number 10 there, windshield wiper issues. There's a crazy thing that happens where we're going into spring, and in the South, I'm down in Florida, we have what's called love bug season, where all these bugs are out on the highway and it gets all over the windshield and the windshield's dirty and the windshield wiper is doing this streak across the windshield. Well, they can get pulled over for that because an officer can look at that streak on the windshield from the windshield wipers and go, I think your windshield wipers are defective because it's not cleaning the windshield the proper way. So, you know, having that knowledge that a officer can look at that and that can be problematic on causing roadside violations or even getting your driver pulled in for an inspection because they see something like that. So how do you fix that? Well, keep the windshield clean and therefore it won't make those streaks there. But these are some of the things we're going to talk about as we go through this. I talk to a lot of different contractors. I handle a lot of different contractors, and I think one of the things that are a point I really want to get across is we have a tendency to push everything to the driver. Okay, driver, you got to do a pre-trip inspection, you got to do an in-trip inspection, you got to do a post-trip inspection, and we push everything to the driver and expect them to solve all our problems. Across our network of the drivers that I deal with, the majority of them do not do great equipment inspections. And we're going to talk about that in more detail. So I want you to be thinking about, okay, I'm not going to solve my problem with drivers doing pre-trip, in-trip, and post-trip inspections. I'm not going to solve my problem by drivers doing better inspections. Um, then what do I need to do to solve this problem? The best thing I can tell you to do is develop a two-step system. So you got the driver inspections on one side of the equation, and then you've got to have your BCs and or maintenance personnel on the other side of this. And this can be a challenging system to implement because we have contractors that have BCs, but they're not local to the terminal. They don't go to the terminal and do this. We have contractors that use outside shops and they maybe only take their tractor over to a shop, and they do it when they need maintenance, not doing preventative maintenance. They're doing the reactive maintenance. I have a problem with my truck, and I need to take it to the shop and do this. So when you're designing your system, you've got to put some type of two step system in where the drivers are doing their inspections and then you've got somebody else as a check and balance that is doing their type of inspection. I had a contractor that I was working with, and they had a bunch of roadside violations, which was really affecting their safety tier and really causing issues with how they were um, managing their maintenance program. So in that situation, they had two BCs that were on property, but those two BCs were not doing the equipment check. And there's a lot of different factors there. They're busy, they're trying to keep line haul happy, they're trying to make sure that their trips are done and things like that. But the two-step system was not working for them to get this accomplished to make sure that the equipment was being inspected properly by the drivers and they were able to look at the inspection. So that contractor had to hire an outside mobile mechanic that came in to the truck lot where they had their trucks parked. And what they did to solve this was to have that person come in once a week and do inspections of the trucks in addition to the drivers. Then they had to make some changes on their BCs. That's how that situation went. And then they had to train the BCs on how to do those inspections also. So we get BCs and they'll go, well, I'm not a mechanic, I'm not sure how to do these inspections, or, I'm not there at the terminal every day or the truck lot every day, and, I just don't have the time to do this. You, as the owner of the contract, have got to figure out how to solve this problem that makes sense to your organization on this. Because if you just rely on the driver's inspections, you're not going to solve the problem. You've got to figure out some type of procedure on this. So with training your BCs, it could be as simple as developing a checklist for your BCs to check the equipment um, every week and going through the things. So let me go through some of the stuff that I see as common problems that cause all of the issues here. So let's start with in the cab. Is the truck clean? Is the inside of the truck clean? I have a DOT officer on staff, and he told me, he goes, when he was doing roadside inspections, one of the first things that he would determine on how well or bad the roadside inspection would go would be from the smell inside of the truck when the driver opened the door. So if the driver opens the door and it just smells horrific inside that truck, and there's a bunch of trash, empty fast food bags and cups and, just a whole bunch of trash inside of the truck, well, that roadside inspection is going to go in a bad way because we don't have the inside of the truck cleaned properly. Then we go to the second step of the roadside inspection is the paperwork. I talk a lot about this with different contractors. I play this game when I go to a terminal location, and I'll talk to a BC and I'll say, okay, you got a tractor binder in the truck? Yes. Do you have a table of contents in that tractor binder? I didn't know I needed to put a table of contents in there. Do you have the ELD manual in there? Do you have the DOT transfer instructions? Do you have the malfunction instructions? Do you have a blank logbook inside the tractor binder? Do you have the registration, the annual inspection, the lease agreement? Do you have your permits in there? Do you have all this? All of that is coming into play on how well or bad this roadside inspection is going to go. And then think about one of the most frequent roadside violations we get is with the fire extinguisher. Well, where's the fire extinguisher? It's underneath the bunk. Well, if the driver has the officer open the bunk underneath and there's a bunch of crap in that bunk and they can't find the fire extinguisher, they can't find the reflectors, they can't get to it, or the fire extinguisher is not in the holder or is expired or things like that, then it's going to be problematic for your roadside inspection because the driver's going to get that violation because the fire extinguisher. I know it seems silly, it's just the fire extinguisher, but it's an easy violation for the driver, excuse me, for the DOT officer to write on that. Uh, I had a safety meeting last week, the same one I just mentioned, and the uh, BC advised that they had the wrong size fire extinguisher that would not fit in the band that held it down, so it could not be secured. Well, that driver got stopped, then they're going to get that violation right off the bat just on that. Then, if you think about the outside of the truck, is it dirty? It's been snowing through the winter. Have we washed the truck? Do we have a wash procedure for our equipment? It's one of the key things that gets your drivers pulled over is they don't keep the equipment clean and things like that. So I want you to think about that when you're building your system here is going, okay, how am I going to get my trucks clean so they're not a target on the side of the road and get your driver pulled over on that. So going back to the two-step process on this. So I highly encourage that your drivers do a pre-trip inspection written and a post-trip inspection written, and then teaching your drivers to do an in-trip inspection. And the in-trip inspection is not written, it is a visual of the things that cause drivers to get pulled over. So let me give you an example. Your driver leaves terminal A and goes to terminal B. And so they're dropping two trailers, picking up two trailers, and they hook up their trailers, they do their tug test, and what should they do at that point? They should do a quick review of the equipment on the things that they will get pulled over on. Are the lights working? Do we have any issues with the mud flaps? Do we have any tire issues that are going on with the trailers that I just picked up? Uh, you know, are the hoses off the catwalk? That's another key thing that gets drivers pulled over is the hoses from the tractor to the lead trailer are resting on the catwalk. That's just telling the highway patrol officer going down the side of the road that, listen, there's probably chafing on that. I'm going to pull them over for that. And that's going to cause issues on this. So teaching your drivers that mindset of, I did training back in December of driving invisible. And the concept of driving invisible is all my lights work on the tractor and trailers. All the tires are good, all the mud flaps are good, and my hoses are off the catwalk. Don't give yourself a reason to be pulled over on this. The same thing that I added in that training was stay out of restricted truck lanes. Don't put yourself as a target to get pulled over. Don't speed. That's going to be a target because if you get pulled over for one of those two things, then you're going to get caught on that to have the vehicle maintenance inspection. And so drive invisible and doing all this. Then on your manager or maintenance inspections, what I want you to do is have a more in-depth inspection of the equipment. Let's say that the equipment's all back at the terminal on Saturday and Sunday. Sunday's a light day. We don't move as much on Sunday. Sunday, I'm going to go through the brakes. There are these little tools you can buy It looks like a little key that goes on a key ring that a BC can quickly do a gap check of the brakes and make sure those are good. A BC may go, well, I'm not a mechanic, I'm not doing that. It is a trainable thing that a BC can learn to do this. I have some drivers that are really good drivers at pre-trip inspections. They know how to check those brake gaps and things like that. But I'm telling you, your drivers don't know how to do that. It's your BC or your maintenance people that need to be really working on that. Thinking about mud flaps. Do you have removable mud flaps on the tractor? Do you have the driver take them off when they put the lead trailer on there? Because what I hear from a lot of different operations is if I leave the mud flaps on, they get torn up and all that, and then you're just spending, hundreds of dollars every month replacing mud flaps and all that. So think about that procedure. Okay, I have removable mud flaps. They take those off when they do this, but having your BCs look at the mud flaps and really look at what's going on with them. So you need to understand that if there's a little tear in the mud flap, that's a violation. If there's a hole in the mud flap, that's a violation. Um, it's that check and balance of looking at that, really looking at the tires, the rims and the wheels, looking for fluid leaks, those type of things to make sure that okay, the driver's done their pre-trip. I'm the BC, I'm looking at it, and the equipment's good. So going back through it for the BC, is my truck clean inside and out? Yes. Are the brakes good? Yes. Do I hear any audible leaks from the brakes or tires? No. Are the tires good? Tread depth good? Do I have any fluids leaking out of the wheel seals? I've lifted the hood. I'm, checking the fluid levels in addition to what the driver is doing to make sure that I have that check and balance that's covering that. Understanding that checking fluid levels is a two-step process. You're looking that you have enough fluid and you're looking at the quality of the fluid. So if your BC or your maintenance person is checking it and they see that the fluid is murky or it doesn't look right or it doesn't smell right or whatever, then you got a problem that the driver may not catch, that there is a serious engine issue going on that checking the interior of the steer tires on the linkages. Do I have any cracks in the frame? Do I have any linkages that are loose or things like that? I mean, you can save a driver's life by making sure that that stuff is checked out. So try to figure out in your operation, and I know there's a lot of different configurations out there. Some people have maintenance people, some people have a garage, some people have to get outside maintenance help, some people have an outside garage they have to drive the equipment to. You've got to figure out somehow how to solve this problem. This is a big one here. I really want you, after this webinar, to look at your driver's DVIR. So a lot of our contractors have moved over to Motive, and they are using the Motive DVIR inside of the ELD. If you use the default DVIR, there's roughly 50 check boxes in there for your driver to check on that DVIR. One of those check boxes in that default DVIR is for a wheelchair lift, which we obviously don't have in our operation. So it doesn't make any sense that it's even in there. So making sure that you fix default DVIR so it makes sense for your operation and not got wheelchair lift in there. Then the next step is I want you to think about the human that is doing your pre-trip and post-trip inspection and put the DVIR in the correct order. So what do I mean by that? You don't want to have the driver start with lifting the hood when that's not where they start their pre-trip inspection. Where does the driver start their pre-trip inspection? They start inside the cab of the truck. Think about when they arrive at the terminal, they are parking the car out in the lot. They walk through, they get to their tractor. It's parked up against the fence over there. They get inside the cab, they start it up, they start their ELD, log in, they go on duty, they put in their duty status is on duty, and then they put in an annotation that says, I'm doing a pre-trip inspection. That's where they're starting. They're starting sitting in the driver's seat. So when you're building your DVIR, start inside the cab. Is the truck clean? Have I checked the tractor binder? Do I have the table of contents? Do I have all the documents? Do I have a blank logbook? Do I have the ELD manual? Do I have all of the things that I'm supposed to have? Do I need to check the interior of the windshield? Do I have any cracks? Do I have any bullseye cracks in the windshield? Anything like that? Then they step out of the truck. They're on the ground. So I have them go back to the rear of the truck. Do they check the fuel cap? Is there any fluid leaking from the fuel cap? Is the fuel cap secure? Um, get all that done. If you have fuel that's coming down the side of the tank and all that, can that be cleaned off so it's not a red flag to get the driver pulled over on that? Okay, now I'm going back to the drive tires. I'm checking the tires. I'm looking at the tread depth. I'm going through any defects in there. I'm looking for nails. I'm looking for, tears in the tire. I'm looking for blemishes. I'm looking at the wheels. I'm looking for fluid leaks. Doing these type of things. I'm looking at the inner tires, checking that, looking for the fluid leaks in that, looking at the backside of the tires, doing that. Then I go to the rear of the tractor. I'm looking at the mud flaps. I'm looking at the conspicuity tape, the red and silver tape, making sure that that's all good, no defects in the mud flaps. I'm checking the lights back there, making sure those are good. I'm checking the pintle hook. This is a common thing that happens. The pintle hook is loose back there. Make them check the pintle hook. Is it good on that? Then I'm going up on the passenger side. I'm looking at the drive tires there, doing the same thing. Then I'm going up the passenger side of the tractor. Then I'm going, looking at all the lights. I'm looking at the marker lights, looking at the mirrors, looking at all of that. Then I'm pulling the hood, coming back around to the driver's side. I'm checking the fluid levels and doing all of that, checking the mirrors, looking at the windshield, doing that. Build your DVIR that follows the workflow of what your drivers are doing, so they're not bouncing from in cab to looking at the motor to the rear of the tractor. Change your DVIR so that it follows that workflow. Now, there's a lot of confusion about trailers, and trailers are supposed to be those pre-trip inspections are supposed to be done in the mobile trip app. Linehaul owns and maintains that equipment. How do they get that information is through the mobile trip app. There are problems in the network on this because we'll have spot drivers that don't use the mobile trip app. So then you may have to, inside of the ELD or whatever your DVIR program is to make sure that the workflow for those inspections on trailers are inside that and making sure that the trailer inspection follows the right workflow on doing everything. So starting at the front of the trailer, kingpin, good. Landing gear, good. Going to tires, Good. No audible air leaks. Good. No fluid leaks. Good. Back, tape, lights, marker lights, going back on the other side of the trailer, making sure that you have your drivers follow the correct workflow and set them up for success on doing this. So um, it's that's going to change how everything is done on this. The secret to really teaching your drivers to do pre-trip and post-trip inspections is to set up the right workflow and have them do their inspection process exactly the same way every single time. So if they get distracted or they get a situation that they're on the phone or something like that, they're going to cause mistakes in their workflow that's going to cause mistakes that get you with roadside violations. This is another big miss with the drivers is they are not prepared for their pre-trip inspections. Remember that drivers must wear a safety vest on terminal lots. They should have gloves to properly do the inspection. Um, they should have safety glasses. None of our drivers do, but if they're checking fluids and things like that, I mean, think about work comp and, eye injuries and things like that. They should have a flashlight. When do a lot of our drivers do inspections? At night. Making sure that they have a flashlight, making sure they have extra batteries, making sure they have a smartphone to take photographs to put into the DVIR. We have a lot of drivers that are on flip phones. They don't take pictures or don't have the ability to take pictures and things like that. So these are things that you've got to be thinking about when our drivers are doing their pre-trip inspections to just make sure they have the right tools, that they show up right, that they are, wearing their protective equipment and that they're not going to get injured doing this. And this is a big one with doing pre-trip inspections. The drivers have to use three senses: sight, touch, and hearing. So this is what causes me for my eye to twitch is when I go in a terminal lot and I see a driver that is doing their pre-trip inspection and they got their headset on, they got their ear pods in, or they got a headset over their ears, or they're talking on the phone, or they're listening to music. How in the world is that driver going to hear an audible air leak from a tire or the brake system or, dripping or things like that? They're never going to hear that if they've got their headset in there. So what am I asking you to do? You got to train your BCs that are at the terminal that if they see a driver that's doing an inspection and they got their headset on, driver, no, we're not doing that. You gotta take those off your ears or out of your ears, and you need to be able to listen to this stuff. Same thing about with having the gloves and checking the tires. When I'm doing a pre-trip inspection, I'm rubbing my hands down around the tires so I can feel that there's a bump in it or a bulge in it or something like that. If you see a driver that's not actually doing that, they're really not doing the right inspection to get a good inspection done. So you have to teach your drivers that, listen, got to be able to hear this. You got to be able to touch this. You got to be able to look at this. You got to have a flashlight. You got to have all of this to make sure that you're doing this. I was talking to one of my contractors yesterday, and one of the key things he teaches his drivers on doing a pre-trip inspection is the very first thing they do after they get out of the cab is look under the truck to look for fluid leaks. Yeah, that is great. Go to the back of the truck and see if it's leaning one way. That's telling you got a low tire, you got a brake airbag issue, framing issue, different things like that. So, you know, looking at these things and making sure that they are using their three senses to accomplish what we're trying to do on these inspections is going to greatly improve your inspection outcomes. I highly recommend that as part of your inspection process that drivers take photos of defects. The problem with that is the drivers do not do a good job with photos. They just take a photo. I'll give you an example. I was reviewing some DVIRs with photos, and the DVR said, take a photo of the rear of the tractor. The driver did that. Nice photo of both mud flaps and the lights on the back of the tractor. And from the driver's point of view, check, boss, I did that. In the photo was an 8-inch hole in the mud flap on the driver's side that the driver did not notate that, didn't, say anything about the defect in it, in the driver's mind. Whoop, I took the photo. That doesn't help you to solve this problem. So, as your managers are looking at these DVIRs, if you see something like that where the driver takes a photo of a part of the equipment with a clear defect in it, then you need to coach that driver and go, driver, you can't do that. You just cannot do that to not tell me about the defect. Then the second problem that drivers have with taking photos is they don't give you any context of the photo. So when I was in that safety meeting last week, I had a driver that had been driving for 25 years. I was doing my discussion with the drivers about, using a finger or using a quarter or something like that to add context to a photo of how big or small the defect is. And that driver goes, I carry a white Sharpie marker and then I can circle the defect in my photo and write notes on it inside the photo. I thought that was a brilliant idea of just giving the drivers a white Sharpie marker that they can mark up tires, or there's a crack in the frame, or there's rust or whatever that they can circle it, write a note on it, and then take the photo of it. What is that doing? It is lowering the time that your truck is in the shop getting that defect fixed. A lot of drivers do is they'll say the defect is a tire defect. Okay. Well, that's not telling me what the real problem is. Okay, this is on the inside driver's side, forward tire, drive tire. It's on the outer edge. I took my white marker, I've circled it. Here's what's going on. Well, the experience with that driver that documents the photo and the defect like that, and that tractor going into the shop, it lessens all the time of that diagnostic of the mechanic trying to figure out, now where is this at? What's going on with this? It just helps with the situation. So as you're training your drivers and talking to your drivers about this, think about how you can train them on adding more context, more information, more visuals to help you identify the defects and all that. So taking the photo is one thing, adding the context is another thing, and then documenting the DVIR correctly is the last thing to make sure of that. So as you as managers are reviewing the DVIRs, if it was me, I would push back on the driver and go, hey, you took this photo. I have not a clue of what you're talking about on this, to get them in the right mindset to take the correct photo with the right context and then document their DVIR properly. I talked a little bit about this, and you've got to put in a procedure that your managers are reviewing the DVIR. Why is that important? You know your equipment better than anybody else knows your equipment. So, what I suggest is that you designate that your BCs review the DVIRs at least weekly. They don't have to review every one of them. So remember, your drivers are doing a pre-trip inspection and a post-trip inspection. You got 20 trucks, so that's 40 inspections in a week. I'm not expecting your BCs to review 40 inspections, but they want to do quality assurance checks on the DVIRs to see what's going on. Is the driver completing the DVIR? Yes. Look at the time of the DVIR. If the driver completes it in 1 minute and 30 seconds, that's not going to bode well for you if your driver is involved in an accident and that legal document becomes part of litigation, that your driver is saying on this document that they completed a full pre-trip inspection in 1 minute and 30 seconds. That's not going to bode well for you on that. You need to look and see, make sure that the drivers are not just pencil whipping these, where they're just checking the boxes. Check, 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 check. There's no photos and things like that. Then you need to look at the quality of the photos and the annotation, just what I was just talking about on that. So think about your workflow. If you've got a 20 truck operation, you got 40 inspections in a week, look through a handful of them, get a good understanding of how your drivers are doing this, because that's going to give you and your managers the information to coach and train your drivers. It's one thing, because we do this, we provide video training for drivers to do this. That's one thing, to do pre-trip inspection videos and things like that. But it's another thing to review the DVIRs and do one-on-one coaching with your drivers on how to make them better. So when I do these on-site safety meetings and I'm talking to drivers about, doing these DVIRs, there's a lot of confusion. They confuse a DVIR versus the ELD. I had a driver meeting a couple of weeks ago where they were completely confused about where to put the trailers in. They thought the trailers needed to be in the DVIR and not in the ELD under the trailer block and all that. So there was mass confusion with multiple drivers in that meeting on that right there. So again, everything I'm talking about today is workflows and processes and procedures and all that. So if you are having the drivers to do the tractor DVIR as a pre-trip inspection, and maybe you have a spot driver that's not doing trailers in the mobile trip app, but they're doing it in Motive, then you got to have an asset inspection in there. Okay. Then you got to create the asset inspection to the workflow for us. Okay, what does that mean? Well, we normally haul 2 trailers and a dolly. So you might have to have your tractor pre-trip and post-trip inspection. Then you have a trailer inspection. Then you have a dolly inspection. You see what we're going through on that workflow, and then make sure those inspections follow the correct workflow on that. If you're putting everything in the mobile trip app, then that solves the trailer and the dolly issues and things like that. You still need to take photographs of that. Another key thing I didn't mention about trailers is a lot of the trailers will have scrapes down the side of them and things like that. If you're putting those inspections in the mobile trip app, then making sure that the drivers are taking pictures of that damage saying, "Hey, I just picked up this trailer. It has this big scrape mark down, the driver's side of the trailer. I'm taking a picture, I'm uploading it, so I'm proving I didn't cause that damage. So you don't want that to come back to you and affect your contract on this and doing that." But thinking about all of this and making sure that we have the verifying the equipment inspections. All right, now there's a game. And this game, I've used this with DOT operations. I've used it with line haul contractors. You can go to Ace Hardware, you can go to Home Depot, you can go to Lowe's, and you can go to the plumbing department, and they have these little tags that are made out of aluminum that have a key ring on it. And it's used to identify and mark plumbing pipes. That's what it is, but they're heat resistant is why I'm saying this. So the game that we play, and I encourage the BCs to enable this, is so let's say your BC's name is John. I'm John. Um, you take one of those plumbing tags and you say, call the manager or call John, and you put it on the dipstick of the tractor. Just pick a tractor, put it on the dipstick. And you know that the driver is supposed to dispatch at 8 p.m. tonight. You look at the ELD, you know they're moving, and your driver didn't call John or the manager. You know that driver did not do a pre-trip inspection. It's a way to catch them on this. There's two ways to handle that. Number one, you can call the driver and say, "Hey, John, how'd your pre-trip inspection go? Any problems with the equipment?" "No, boss. Everything was fine." "Well, John, I know you didn't do the pre-trip inspection because I had a tag on the dipstick and you did not open the hood and look at it and call me." So that's one way to handle it. And the other way is let's say John's a good driver that does a good pre-trip inspection, opens the hood and sees the tag and says, "Call manager or call John," and he calls you. "Hey, great job, driver, on that. I'm going to give you a $20 gift card to the steakhouse tonight." There's two things that are going to happen with those two scenarios. Number one, if you catch the driver and they didn't do the inspection, what's that driver going to do? They're going to tell all the other drivers, "Hey, you better check the hood and the engine compartment and see if there's a tag on the dipstick and they've got this on there." And then the second thing is if the driver does catch it and you give them a gift card for a dinner or something like that, or gas or, groceries at the grocery store, whatever, then they're also going to tell the drivers, "Hey, I did my pre-trip. I opened the hood. I checked the dipstick. I saw this tag on there. I called my manager. They gave me a $20 gift card to take me and the wife out to dinner tonight." That's what is going to reinforce the behavior. The manager, you do not have to do this all the time. Just do it every so often. Just pick it. It's pick, do one or two tractors in the beginning. As soon as it starts being noticed by your drivers, they're going to talk to the other drivers, and this problem's going to fix itself. Then you're going to get into, all right, I may go a month or two and not put it on there, then stick it back on there. "Oh, boss is doing this again. I better call the other drivers and tell them about this to make sure that we're doing this." So it's an easy way, especially if you have managers that are not local on the terminal lot. You may have to get a lead driver or somebody that is acting as a manager to do this for you, or an outside mechanic could do this for you. But doing that procedure right there is going to ensure that your pre-trip and post-trip inspections are being completed. And it'll give you a great way to verify that. And this is what I was talking about on reviewing the DVIR for weekly QA, monitoring the performance, coaching and improvement. That's really um, the key thing that you really need to be doing in these inspections and all that. So it, I know it's a lot. I've covered a lot, and you're sitting here going, "How in the world am I going to do all this?" It's just getting the processes in place in the right order and doing this stuff so that your drivers are set up for success. I can get into, I get into a lot of it with different contractors that they're trying to build their DVIR. There's one mindset that I want to make sure that I'm capturing everything, and they've got 50 check boxes, like I was saying earlier. And then the mindset is I want to set up my DVIRs to capture just the essential stuff that I need the drivers to catch on that. So that's the other mindset and all that. You've got to be thinking about our drivers in this network. For me to do a proper pre-trip inspection on a tractor, two trailers, and a dolly would take me 45 minutes to do a proper pre-trip inspection. Our drivers are not going to do that at all. So you've got to make sure that you set it up in a way. I think a reasonable amount of time is about 15 minutes. So again, optimizing the DVIR to go in the right order, optimizing that your BCs or mechanics are doing the check and balance on this stuff, knowing drivers aren't going to do brakes, that they're going to do brakes, that a driver can tell you a brake defect from the performance of the tractor, but those type of things. Making sure that you get all of this and then thinking about litigation. Again, if the inspection is showing a minute and 30 seconds versus 15 minutes, that's going to be a problem for you. That is going to be a major problem for you in an accident that this stuff is not done correctly on that. Finally, before I get into question and answers, other procedures you need to have in place are red tag procedures. There is great miscommunication or understanding of red tag procedures. So step number one, make sure that you have 10 or 15 red tags in the door of every one of your tractors. Number one, go in the Linehaul office, get you a handful of red tags and put it in your tractor in the door. That's step one. Step two, make sure there's a black Sharpie marker with that stack of red tags. Step one. Step two. Step three is teach your drivers how to use red tags. It is nothing more infuriating than a driver put a red tag on a dolly or a trailer and it's blank. Think about the mechanic. They have no idea what the problem is with what's going on with that equipment. Again, just like the DVIR is putting in on the red tag that says there's a hose problem on the dolly, here's where it is, or it's the driver's side tire or whatever. It's this trailer, it's this tire, whatever the issue is, to do that. You as a manager need to make sure that they're following that process. So if a driver is talking to you and go, I can't use that dolly because it has this problem, and they put a red tag on it and you happen to be at the terminal, well, go over there and look at it. Hey, driver, come here. Come here. You put the red tag on there, but you didn't fill it out properly. You see where the problem is and things like that. And then with trailers, we got some issues with trailers. We have a lot of trailers that are older equipment. They're patched together to get out on the road and things like that. We have some terminal locations that have a trailer barn, and we have other locations that don't have a trailer barn. And then you're stuck in between Linehaul that says we loaded this trailer and you need to take that trailer with a known defect on it. So, okay, that's another problem. Then you've got a location that doesn't have a trailer barn. What do I do in this situation? Am I going to push back to Linehaul and tell them that I can't take this trailer and they're going to have to unload that trailer and reload another trailer and all that? So you need to be teaching your BCs and your drivers on what the process on this. I can give you multiple examples. I had one contractor call me where um, the brake line underneath the trailer was spliced. They cut it in half and they spliced the brake line together, which was legal on doing the repair that way, but it was going to cause the driver, if he was stopped, to be in question on was it the right repair. So a temporary repair like that is for when the trailer is, let's say, local and I need to take it back to the terminal. But this was an over the road driver that was in a team truck that was going to be gone for 6 days. The proper information from the regulation is that entire hose needed to be replaced because it was not legal to take it over the road for 6,000 miles for the week to do that. So my contractor AO got into a huge discussion with the line haul manager, says, I'm not taking that trailer, and here's why, and things like that. So he was facing a decline on that. He was facing a problem that, I know that I'm going to get the roadside violation against my SRS report, and this is going to be an issue. We get into this issue with the ABS light. You can go up to most of the trailers and wiggle the wiring behind the ABS light and make it turn on or off. I had another situation where the front panel of the trailer, the front panel was blown in. The AO again said, I'm not taking that trailer. I've had trailers that were hot wired. I've had trailers catch on fire from the hot wire from the trailer barn. There's a real issue there on knowing what the right thing to do is. And the right thing to do is take that responsibility away from your driver and get it up to the management to have the discussions with Linehaul on what's going on with the trailer. It's not a good situation for the driver and the Linehaul folks to get into an argument about trailer situations. You need to move that over to the management to make sure that they are having those discussions with Linehaul so they can make the business decision and go, hey, we're not taking this trailer because if we get stopped, we're going to get a roadside violation. And understanding you may get a decline on that. So that's where it needs to be on the managers. The final thing before I start going into questions, and I want to make sure that we have a good understanding of how this affects you, is that roadside violations are 45 points. They are 45 points for each roadside violation you get. So that's whether it's on the tractor and or the trailers. I want you to know that is in your SRS, your safety results summary report, that if you get a roadside violation, that you're looking at 45 points. That is the same points as would be in a preventable accident. That's how serious this is. So I had a contractor, didn't have any accidents, but he had 12 roadside violations in a year, which caused him to have a very low safety tier because of the roadside violations on there. So it's serious. It's very serious on you keeping your contract, you not being under an OTC, you're not having to do all this stuff. You've got to really think about the processes of this, setting your drivers and your managers up for success, and making sure that you are doing this correctly. Um, so I'm going to go into questions and answers on this, and let's see what we got here. Okay, so the first one is what's your advice on setting up disciplined preventative maintenance schedules? And that is a great question in all this. So here's the first issue on that is what are the different equipment that you have? Okay, do you have Freightliners? All of them? Do you have Volvos? Do you have Max and all that? Your preventative maintenance schedule could be different for different things on depending on the equipment that you have running in your contract. So that's the first issue is identifying that. Um, these preventative maintenance schedules are way out now. I mean, I've seen some on the newer trucks that on certain preventative maintenance could be 50, 60, 70,000 miles out, and that may not be the right thing for your operation. Um, so this question is a good question because you may need to do your preventative maintenance schedule a lot more frequent, not thinking about that the equipment can go 50,000 miles without that preventative maintenance, but thinking about litigation on, okay, my tractor has been involved in an accident and I didn't do preventative maintenance. Like, I'm following the recommended schedule for preventative maintenance, and that may not have been good enough for that. So thinking about that, and I know we have different situations where we lease trucks from different folks. We have maintenance warranty programs that we have in place that are issues that those are different factors on that you might not be able to get your full PM done because your warranty program says, well, it's not time to do that or whatever. Um, those are good things to think about on that. And yes, I did say this. The next question was I thought the first part of inspection was the approach looking for leaks and leans and windshield cracks. Yes, as you approach a tractor, that's sort of the first thing that a driver should do as they're approaching their tractor. Thinking about what I said in the workflow as they're going through the terminal out to the lot, the tractor's parked up against the fence and all that. That is a good first part of doing it. I'm talking more about starting the DVIR process of actually logging into the ELD, going on duty, putting the annotation in, or doing your pre-trip inspection, and then getting to the DVIR itself. That's why I start in the tractor and move outside the tractor and go around the tractor. But good point. Good question. Do you know if we have the capability and motive to set up the workflow the way we see fit? Yes, that is, uh, you can do that. So when you start your motive contract in the ELD or any ELD, matter of fact, they have that default inspection in there. So it just automatically loads. What I'm telling you to do is to go to the administrative dashboard. You're going to go to the DVIR, which will say tractor inspection or something like that. There'll be two of them in there, tractor inspection and an asset inspection. The asset inspection is for the trailers and then the tractor inspection. So if you'll open the default inspection for motive, you'll see it. You'll scroll down, you'll see that wheelchair lift is in there and just a whole bunch of different things. Take Think about my workflow of starting in the tractor and going through everything and, checking the binder, checking the cleanliness of the truck and the gauges and things like that. That would be box number one. Well, actually, box number one generally is the odometer reading in the DVIR. So, what is the odometer reading? If you're using Whip Around or Fleetio or something like that, and I think Motive does it too, where the driver can take a picture of the odometer reading and it'll just enter it automatically on there. So, okay, got my odometer reading, looking at the cleanliness, doing all that. There's your first box. Then you can move the boxes up and down, sort of like a checklist. Then, okay, checking the fuel cap. There's your next box. And then changing the notes from the default. So it gives you the action. It gives you, do you want a photo of the included with the action, and then the note on this. That's where you can give your driver the helpful tips of what you really want to accomplish in that action, and then just build your pre-trip on this. So get away from the default one, and then just build it out from there. And then the second thing in Motive that is real important is there is a driver walkthrough feature that can cause your drivers to walk through what you want done. So we use it for the ELD to make sure that the driver connects to the truck. Okay, if the driver doesn't connect to the truck, that causes unidentified driving events. So, okay, the first thing in the walkthrough is that. And the second thing is the driver must certify any uncertified logs. Okay, so now we don't have any uncertified logs. Then the next driver walkthrough is form and manner. Put the trailers in and put in shipments. FedEx parcels for loaded trailers, the word empty for empty trailers, and bobtail with no trailer. Then the next one that you can put in is the pre-trip inspection. Forces the driver to do the inspection. It's not if they do it, it's forcing your drivers to do that in the driver walkthrough. Then you can add a end of day walkthrough, a separate walkthrough, and go, oh, I want my driver to do a post-trip inspection. So you go back into Motive, into the administrative dashboard. You go all the way to the bottom to where it says driver app. You hit driver app, and then you go into the top there and you'll see driver walkthrough. And then you'll see a blue button that says create new walkthrough. Create the new walkthrough, end of day. And then what are you doing at the end of day? Making sure your driver certifies their log and a post-trip inspection. Now, here's the workflow on a pre-trip inspection versus a post-trip inspection. You may not want the post-trip inspection to be as thorough as the pre-trip inspection. So think about that. We don't want the driver spending hours, doing administrative work to get this done. So think about that as you build your post-trip inspection, that maybe the box is I check the tires, the flaps, the lights, and then notify me of any other defects or anything that's going on with the truck. Something simple like that can really help with your workflow on this, especially in Motive on that. And the reason I keep saying Motive is we're all moving to Motive on this. So I think there's a lot that's going to be going on. I think that corporate is going to start grading the contractors on the pre-trip and post-trip inspections because they have access to Motive. It only makes sense. They have not told me that. That's John Davis speaking. But I'm thinking that that's where we're headed in all this, that they're not going to want us using Whip Around or Fleetio or any other app out there. They're going to want it in here. So getting this set up correctly and doing it the right way is going to help you in the long run. Can you repeat the the proper place for spot drivers to do the DVIR? Okay. And then again, that's a good question. Is my understanding for a lot of spot drivers is they're not using the mobile trip app. So your tractor DVIR pre-trip inspection should be in Motive, right? You should have the driver walkthrough of just what I said, doing all of that and doing the post-trip inspection. The problem with spot drivers is because they're not using the mobile trip app, where the over the road drivers are putting their trailer inspections is in the mobile trip app. You would have to have the asset inspection in your Motive app for them to do trailers. Now, here's the problem. Spot drivers move 10 to 15 to 20 trailers a day. It's hard enough to get the drivers to put the trailer numbers in the ELD, and that is required. I get that question asked a lot in my driver meetings is, well, I'm moving 15 trailers a day. I don't have time to put all the trailer numbers in. Well, here's the reality of this. Linehaul requires you to put the trailers in the ELD, the trailer numbers in the ELD. And the other thing is you are required to have the shipments right and the trailer number right at the time of a stop. So if you move trailer 100 and 100 is connected to you, but you didn't put trailer 100 in there, then that's going to be problematic. Thinking about workflow, spot drivers are moving fast. I don't have time to do a big pre-trip inspection on trailers. Keep your trailer inspection inside of Motive. That's where I would put it, to three simple things: lights, tires, flaps. That's really it. They don't have time to do and you may want to add trailer damage in there. Please upload photos of any damage to the trailer, to that. So you got three or four boxes on that, and that is how your drivers are going to do their pre-trip inspection on trailers. So let me back all the way out on spot drivers. They get to the terminal, they're going to do a pre-trip inspection, a full inspection on the tractor at the beginning of their day. Then they're going to start their day. They're going to pick up their first trailer at the terminal, and they would do a quick trailer inspection on that trailer. What you're really wanting to make sure is you don't have any visible defects and you don't have any visible damage that you're going to get caught with on your contract as, hey, this was your driver that did this damage. Okay, did that trailer. They're going to spot that trailer over, I'm going to say Walmart. Go to Walmart, they drop that trailer, they pick up the trailer at Walmart, they do the right door pull procedures, they pull that trailer from Walmart. They're going to do another quick inspection of that trailer under the asset. All right, checking lights, flaps, tires, no damage. Take that trailer back to the terminal, pick up the next trailer. Now I'm going over to Home Depot. I'm doing my inspection at the terminal on that trailer, go to Home Depot. It is a pain in the butt, I'm telling you. But this is what needs to happen to protect you, not only on the fact that you want to capture that damage or that defect, but you want to make sure that your drivers aren't caught on the side of the road with not having the trailer portion done. So it's a pain of a workflow. But if you think about it, driver, get out, look at the trailer, walk around the trailer. That takes 2 minutes. I'm looking at the lights, looking at the tires, looking at the flaps. Doom, 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 doom. Good, good. No damage. Good. Done. Back in the tractor, and I'm gone. So thinking about 1 to 2 minute process on there. Can you speak to the requirements for record keeping, maintenance, and repairs? That's a very good question. So under the DOT regulations, we've got to keep these for, if I remember right, caught me off guard there. I think it's 15 months is, if I remember right, is keeping those Those are on defects. Those are defects and work orders on the 15 months on that. For a actual DVIR for the driver, the rule used to be that the driver had to have their DVIR out on the road, regardless if it had a defect or not a defect. The rule now is the driver must have the DVIR documenting a defect. Okay, here's where drivers get in trouble. And I'm glad this question was asked. We have a conversation. Let's say you have a set of teams. Okay, we got a set of team drivers and they're out on the road. They leave the terminal on Sunday and they go out on the road. Let's say they're going from 299 in Savannah and they're going to Rialto and back. And the driver on Tuesday, they left on Sunday, leaves on Tuesday, or out on Tuesday, they find a defect. They call the maintenance person or the manager and they go, look, I got this issue going on. And they have a discussion. They go, well, we can fix that when you get back to 299 on Saturday. I'll schedule it for the shop to make sure that we have all of this taken care of. All right, here's where the problem happens for the driver. They document the defect on the DVIR on Tuesday, but they generally forget to document it on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. That's where the problem is. So make sure that you teach your drivers on that. If y'all are having business discussions, they go, look, this is not an out of service violation. It's something we can take care of when you get back. Make sure that they document that defect on the inspection report all days that they're out. And then the final part of the way this works with a DVIR is documenting the inspection process is, okay, the driver identified the defect. That's the first requirement. The maintenance person corrects the defect and then signs off of it. That's the second requirement. And then the third requirement, which is often missed, is the original driver has to sign off on the DVIR that it was corrected. So let's talk about, let's say it was a fluid leak in the wheel of the steer tire. Driver identifies it on the original DVIR fluid leak on this. They take it to the shop. The shop does their inspection and then gives you a work order and shows you they corrected the fluid leak in the wheel. Okay, that's step two. Then the driver has to go back to the original DVIR from that repair and sign off on it that says, yes, I confirm that this defect was fixed by the maintenance personnel. I feel like I confused y'all on that, but it's really a three-step process. Identify the defect, fix the defect, and then re-inspect by the original driver that was fixed. All right. Kind of confused, and I have confused a lot of folks on this call, I'm sure. Yes, I am a third-party vendor that handles safety for multiple contractors. I am not a FedEx employee and all this, and it's contractors call. Um, when I say that drivers and contractors call, drivers are contacting the contractor's BCs or maintenance personnel, and the contractors can call us on helping them set up. Like the question that was asked a minute ago from one of the folks that said, is there a way to set up the DVIR properly? Yes, there is a way to do that. and that is one of my contractors that is a customer of mine. All that person has to do is contact us and go, please set up my DVR the way you said in this webinar and make it happen for me. Roger that. When I do these webinars, I am using I present this information like a contractor is not using us, and that I am solving their problem, whether you use us or not use us, that you're able to solve these type of issues. So uh, anyway, that hopefully that clears a little bit of that up. All right. As a former CDL tester for the state of approach of truck is the first part of pre-trip is a fail if missed and test in. Second part being the engine compartment. Yeah, truck has changed in the last 6 months since I was a tester. What's the DOT compliance position on this? That's a good question. Um, when I when I am teaching this stuff, we get into if you think about training drivers, thinking about them going to CDL school and going to pass the test. What is the one thing that is a major part of passing the test is learning how to do a proper pre-trip inspection. And when they go to CDL school, they teach it in a certain way. And they teach it, there's a lot involved going through the engine compartment. It's just not pulling the dipstick. I mean, it's looking at the framing. It's looking at the inside of the steer tires. It's looking at the linkage. It's looking at hoses. It's looking at different things there that you can spend a lot of time in doing that type of inspection. And what I get here and what I train is the workflow that works for a line haul operation, thinking that the driver parks their car at the terminal lot. They walk through the terminal. They get out on the lot. The tractor is backed up to the fence. They have to do an inspection on the tractor. Then they drive the tractor from that position over to the dolly pull. They pick out a dolly. They do an inspection on the dolly. They take the dolly and park it in front of the pup trailer. They do an inspection of the pup trailer. Then they go find their lead trailer. They pull it around, they line it all up, they do an inspection of the lead trailer, they hook up all the trailers, they do their tug test, they do a final inspection of everything. Then they're doing connection photos of the hoses from the tractor to the lead trailer. The fifth wheel is not high hooked, that the jaws are locked, that the pintle hook you have a picture of, that you hook the dolly up in the right order, that you're not high hooked on the dolly fifth wheel, that the yoke shank is right, that the doors are closed, that the doors are secure, that the cables are locked, and then all the other inspection. It's a lot, I know. So when I'm talking about the format and the flow that I am teaching, I'm teaching that flow right there to, do it this way to make it easier on the drivers, knowing, and this person talked pre-trip inspections, and I'm pretty sure they would agree with me that again, it would take me 45 minutes to do a proper pre-trip inspection, which our drivers are just not going to do. That's that two-step process where our BCs and or maintenance people need to help our drivers out on that. And then another question is, does the motive allow to take pictures of the connections? Yes, we can set that up for you. If you don't mind sending me a message on that. You just set it up as an inspection and you just trick the format inside of Motive allows you to put in certain blocks that allow a photo. And that's all you do is you just create it that way to make sure that we set it up in the right order. And again, the order is hoses, tractor fifth wheel, no high hook, pedal hook, dolly, all that. And we'll just put that in for you to do that. But that's what you would do inside of Motive is just create a separate inspection. All the blocks are photos and then put it in the order that I just said. Y'all asked some really great questions. And I know there is a lot with maintenance that I could have gotten into. I'm already an hour and a half into this. Reach out to us on questions on, all right, I know you said this on setting up my inspection this way. Can you send me the workflow on the proper order on this? If you're a customer of mine, then just send us an email and say, hey, I heard John Davis do this webinar. Please set up my inspection that way or whatever. We generally don't touch those for contractors, preemptively because I've learned with contractors, all of y'all have different ways of doing these things. I'm giving you one workflow that I think makes sense on all of this, but you may have a totally different workflow. I have some contractors that have a full shop. They bring their trucks in once a week into the shop. They have a safety lane. They have their mechanics go through the equipment with a fine-tooth comb. I have other contractors that have a mobile mechanic that comes on once a week and they work out of the truck lot and do that. I have BCs that do it. It's You just let us know if you currently work with us what you want, and I'll make it flow the way it should and all that. So I really appreciate every one of you attending today, and just reach out to us. I'm here to help in trying to get this problem solved. It's one of the biggest problems. As I said, the violations have increased so much that ex-corporate Linehaul is pushing back to the contractors. What are you guys doing to fix this problem? And I'm telling you, the problem is the workflow issue, and we've got to solve the workflow issue. So I really appreciate you. Thank you for attending, and we will catch you on the next time.